All right, so we are coming live from the Mitten 15 from Harvest Canteen, and we're going to interview tonight Mr. Patrick Boyer. How you doing, Patrick?
I'm doing great, Scott. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good. Doing good. I see. While I'm searching the websites, that you're calling this. You're using your full name, Patrick John Boyer, for the new record here, Rust and Lacquer.
Yeah. I when I was getting ready to put it out there, I went back and forth whether I was just going to use like PJ or Patrick John, and I searched Spotify to see how many other Patrick Boyers there were, and there were no other Patrick John Boyers, and so I was like, I'm gonna maybe try to go a little more dignified.
It's awesome. I was actually doing a search for your name to get the record to come up, and I kept getting the
Mm,
same guy over and over, and it was not you. And I'm like, okay. And then
yeah, yeah,
I dug it
yeah.
up here on Cubase, which is actually an app I use.
Yep.
You're in here with the big digital download available. Are you marketing this? Are you putting the CD out or
I
album or?
really don't. I don't foresee a physical copy. I mean, I've kind of toyed around with doing some physical copy. I'm not going to be able to do vinyl. It's not cost effective enough.
Right.
It's not like I tour, so I mean, it's really hard to. I didn't want to. The minimum was going to be like 250 units.
Yeah.
And last thing I wanted to do was sell maybe 100 of them and sit there and look at 150 units that are not
Oh yeah.
going anywhere, And then that was also even kind of when I was talking with Dominic about what I might do. Uh, that we kind of talked about that, and that was one of the things that I think he helped steer me a little bit. Say, well, just remember, if you don't get rid of them all, you're going to be looking at them all. So
True.
and yeah, just for getting myself back to it. I mean, I had not released any music in 20 years. you
Really?
know yeah, it was a long drought. Well, there were 6 years in there that I wasn't playing at all. um so so it was like, okay, I'm coming back into it. This is going to be a completely different type of record than anything I've done before. I know that our history, you and I, when we've played together, it was more the electric kind of blues rock and maybe even um, experimental type stuff too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a venture down a different path for me musically. So
Totally.
um,
And well, didn't it come out of the improvisations or improvisations, however you wanted to pronounce that?
yeah, that
Uh,
trips people up. It's the improvisations. So
improvisations. Okay.
yeah, so yeah, yeah. It somewhat, yeah. Um, most of the tracks were actually kind of really written prior to me really getting into my improvisations, the stuff. The whole improvisations thing is basically just like a uh, kind of a feeder thing for me to work ideas, and it's not even just necessarily musically. It's about working on improving your daily outlook on things, by moving forward, by doing something.
Keeping your
um,
chops up.
yeah, keeping chops up and just feeling like you're taking a step forward, even if it's just little baby steps, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's, I think that's kind of one of the things as musicians or creatives in general. That's one of the things we struggle with, is just feeling like we're doing anything that's really, has a purpose of any kind. Even if the purpose is nothing more than just kind of getting a little better at something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, and also trying to tie in things that I see or experience. That's what the musical themes were kind of coming out of, were moments and times of things that I would have, that I'd have moments of aha moments, or moments of despair, maybe even. But yeah, that's what the improvisations were, and some of what is on the record is out of that stuff. It was actually those posts that I was doing all the time that prompted um, Dominic John Davis to reach out to me and say, "Hey, man, I've seen you've been posting a lot of stuff. Why why don't you do a record?" You know, and so in the midst of doing all of that, and it really kind of came at a really pivotal time for me too, because at the time I was working on a project, a job, a day job that was one of the soul sucking things. That I was on the road. I was in Southeast Texas by myself. Family's all back in Tennessee, and man, I was just really, really down in the dumps. And out of the blue, Dominic reached out to me and
Oh,
suggested doing that. And well, I tell you what, that I mean, it might seem a bit extreme, but man, that was really a turning point for me mentally.
excellent.
And
Well, he's from our
yep,
area too, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's from Detroit. He's from Cass City, or not Cass. He went to Cass Tech High School, and of course, his primary boss that he tours with
Mm-hmm.
also went to that same school. So
Ah,
they went to high school together. They've known each other since I think they were like 6 years old or
well,
something
for
like that.
those listening to this, it's Jack White, his bass player Dominic, and Dominic's a longtime friend of Patrick's, and Patrick's been a. You used to play in a band called The Herd back in the day too, right?
Yes, yes, yep. And then I promoted a bunch of shows, stuff around Lansing, and that's where I got to know Dominic.
Okay.
At the time, I had a mobile recording unit that I ran with my buddy Chris Holtz,
Yep.
and we went down and recorded "Stepping in It," which was Dominic's band. We went down and recorded some live tracks for them. Ended up going on their first record, "Take Your Shoes Off."
Hmm.
And that's where I got to know Dominic. And through doing the shows that I was doing, I brought like Victor Wooten and Bela Fleck and a bunch of different Indian classical shows to the Lansing area. And Dominic and the guys from Stepping In It were we they just appreciated what I was doing, and so we built some sort of a connection through all of that. And
Wow. I remember the
so
shows you were putting on. You put on a lot
yeah,
of different shows,
yeah, yep,
different styles.
yeah, yep. Everything from the Rova saxophone quartet, which is the horn section for the Mr. Bungle records.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, I did one of those, and that was the one that probably bombed the worst. Or should I say, it bombed the best? It bombed better than any other bomb that I've ever done. People just didn't, they didn't get that one too much. But yeah, I really loved doing the Indian classical stuff.
Oh, that's where
Um,
I came along. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So.
Ooh, there was a show in Mount Pleasant in a little side house off campus, and Mike Johnson told me about it, and I at the time I was in the band Muddy Gumbo, and we were playing with you guys on and off, and it was like we drove from Midland out to Mount Pleasant, and oh my gosh, it was a game changer that night.
Yeah, yeah. I remember that. I
Tabla and
remember that show. Yep,
sitar and whoa.
yep, yep. That was with Geeta Ramanathan. She was actually playing the Veena, which is kind of like the sister instrument to the sitar, and I think it actually goes farther back in time than the sitar does. And an interesting thing about Geeta is her father was the guru that taught John McLaughlin.
Really?
Yeah, Indian music. So when she talked, it was so great because when I picked her up for that tour, because I was managing Sandeep, the tabla player that
Yep.
played with her, and I drove them around for that tour that went up through the UP, and it was a bunch of schools gigs and whatnot. And it was so cool because she had just come from recording sessions with Andy Summers.
Really?
And yeah, and so she told all about that, and the when she was growing up as just a little girl, she used to go and she'd like peek in while her dad and John McLaughlin were playing, and she talked about having a crush on John McLaughlin. It was just really cool. It was like, wow, man, John McLaughlin, holy crap. I don't know if it really gets much more
Yeah.
intense for that Indian crossover fusion type stuff than that guy.
How did you get involved in booking all that?
Um, I was really into that kind of music. When I was back in a band, Urban Farmers. I don't know if we really knew each other back then, but we
Nope,
did a
you
lot
just
of.
had come out of that. Was it that was prior to the herd?
Yes, yes, it was prior to the herd,
That's the
and we
herd. I
were
saw you when you were in the herd.
okay. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so prior to the herd, Urban Farmers was like a progressive, almost like a progressive ethnic rock kind of thing. We pulled a lot from Middle Eastern music, a lot of East Indian classical music, and even Irish folk type music, and kind of blended a lot of that stuff together. A lot of really trippy, spaced out stuff. I should get you some of that stuff so you can check it out. I
Please
think
do.
yeah, I think you'd appreciate it. That was we had like a core of people that would come and they would just trip, right? They'd come and trip because we just went off. We would go off in tangents. So I was really into that kind of music, and there was a bass player by the name of Justin. I'm trying to remember Justin's last name. He worked at um, Cook's Music at the time, and then it became B's Music. Um, and Justin knew I was really into that stuff, and he told me about this Topo player that was going to come play in Mount Pleasant. This is well before the show that you were talking about that you went and saw.
Hmm.
And so when I was there talking with, it turned out it was Sandeep Berman. And at the time, Sandeep had just done recordings with Bela Fleck on the Outbound record.
Hmm.
And so Sandeep was looking for people that could help him, with his whole thing. So he was trying to do a lot of that, almost like Shakti and um, uh, John McLaughlin's
Yeah.
Mahavishnu, kind of that fusion-y kind of thing. And so one thing led to another. I got hooked up with Sandeep, and that's where it was like I started meeting all. I met a lot of great people. Sandeep was a handful to deal with, but there was a lot of great people that I got to talk to and meet a little bit and work with, kind of like in the perimeter. I didn't ever work closely with like Steve Smith was one of them. Steve Smith went on one part of the tour, and that was like he had like Steve Smith and like Victor Bailey and some
Steve
of
Smith
his.
of Journey, right?
Yes,
Hmm.
yes. And Steve was really into that fusion type stuff.
Yeah.
And so it just one thing led to another, and through Sandeep, I met a lot of these Indian classical shows. And so whenever Sandeep was ready to do a tour, because I was connected with him, it allowed me to bring that stuff to Mid Michigan.
That was
Lansing,
insane, man.
yeah. Lansing was really kind of the core of where most of that was, where I did most of that.
I remember Rick's was hopping back then. There was a couple other places, Silver Dollar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I always go down for some gigs here and there in the '90s.
Right on, right on. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
No,
since gone, right?
you took all that, man. You played up here and you were in some bands on and off, and you were busy with all that. What took you out of the state? Was it your job or change
Well,
of pace?
so kind of get back aiming towards back to the record here,
Uh
right?
huh.
So yeah, I was at the time I was working a day gig with a large company that was looking to build a new plant or facility down in the state of Tennessee. And so I relocated with them, and at that time I had been about 5 years since I had been actually playing. I had really kind of gotten away from playing all of it. I really kind of thought the whole part of my life was behind me. And so when I got down to Tennessee, being in the proximity of Nashville, and the fact that my house is literally just over a mile from where they hold the Tennessee Fiddler Championships. So I went to go see that stuff, and one thing led to another. I just one day I was stressed out from work, and I came home. I just left early, and I came home and I pulled my guitar out and I sat on my back porch, and I was out there for a couple hours just seeing what I could remember. And it was kind of bizarre because I was sitting there, and I got done playing, kind of messing around. I looked and I had a neighbor that was sitting on his air conditioning unit, just sitting there listening, and it just felt good. It felt good to have someone hearing me play.
Outstanding.
And so it brought me back to it. And so yeah, we picked up some noise here.
Yeah, you're gonna get that. It's my furnace.
Oh, okay.
Is it heavy? Is it
Things
really
are
loud?
heating up now, man. Things are
Yeah.
heating up now. So yeah, so that's how I found my way back to music, and I started approaching music in a completely different way. Listening to a lot of bluegrass players. Nashville,
Hmm.
you're going to run into that, right? There are just so many great players, and I really kind of just put myself out there in a way that I hadn't done before. and I went down and I went to picking circles, and man, the bluegrass guys just chewed me up and spit me out, but it was refreshing.
It gave
Um,
you a new lease on your playing in a sense.
oh yeah, completely different, a completely different way, and I think that's what led to Rust and Lacquer being so much primarily acoustic.
Hmm.
Um, that that I just that's just where it kind of felt like it went. So as as some time progressed, and that was in 2012. That was 10 years ago that
Really?
I came back to it. Yeah. And so then I just started writing a lot of different ideas. I finally set my recording stuff up and was capturing various things, and probably 2/3 of what you're hearing on Rust and Lacquer came out of that kind of time frame. So that tells you how long some of these things have been around.
Wow.
And then I started hanging around with songwriters in Nashville too, and learning a whole lot more about just the craft of songwriting. There's Man, I tell you, you know, and I'm not talking about the corporate um, country songwriters. I'm
Hmm.
talking about guys that really write in a whole different level of substance and a different perspective, right?
Wow.
And so I just started, and that's where we end up with a couple of tunes on the record that have some vocals. That's a complete departure for me.
Right.
I was never a vocal guy, right?
Right.
And that was the scary part. That was really the scary part for me.
Was that one
Uh,
of your ideas, or was it Dominic idea, or how?
no, no, actually, I became strongly. I definitely wanted to tune Rust on there because it's really it's a metaphorical story about me coming back to music. Right? It's told from the viewpoint of a car, an old car being found in a field, but it's metaphorical, and uh,
Beautiful.
and I felt it was important for me to have that on there, and the whole record really is, even though it's primarily instrumental, it is all coming from a point in time where I met points in life where I just needed to feel like there was like some sort of hope or some positivity going on around me. And there's been a lot of times where I was really, really not in a very positive mindset. And so this is kind of emerging out of some pretty dark and rough times for me.
Did that
Um,
did that stem from being on the road so much, away from your family, or other issues?
no, just other issues. You
Okay.
know, um, it's like you see all this dialogue about depression and things like
Hmm.
that, and we don't really need to go down that too far, but I do want to kind of get that across that there's been bouts in my family. There's been that kind of a
Hmm.
thing, um, you know, and I went through some serious bouts of depression myself. Part of it was being away from music. Part of coming back to it was like um, was like a revelation. It's like, wow, I really can't believe I turned my back on this part of my life. And so the title of the record, Rust and Lacquer, is about um, finding that your way back from being stuck in a field somewhere, right?
Hmm.
And you're all rusty and you look ragged as hell, but someone finds the beauty in that rust, the imperfections, and they're cool with it. And they're so cool with it that they're willing to just put a clear coat of lacquer over the rust. And
Wow.
and that and that stems from a meeting I had, a guy that I met down in Muscle Shoals. I had friends of mine that were recording at Fame Studios down there, and I met this guy, uh, Jim Michaels, and he restores old cars. And after one of the sessions, we went out to his place, and he took me into his shop. And my dad was a body man, so I kind of there's a part of me, a thread of my history that's kind of tied to cars, right?
Hmm.
Race cars and just old cars being restored and whatnot. And so Jim was telling this whole story. He was showing me a '62 Bel Air, and it had splotches of rust all over it. And the only thing that he did is he pulled the body and everything off, and he went through and he completely cleaned up and repainted all the chassis and all the undercarriage and everything like that. But the body itself, he put it back on, and he said, I love knowing where this car has been, and it's got a whole story to tell, and it would be a shame for me to cover it with paint. So I'm just going to put a clear coat of lacquer over it.
Oh, wow.
And it was so ironic because at that time I was writing the tune Rust before that, because I was working for a junkyard for a period, and I found these old cars, and I kept having this idea. It's like, man, you find these old cars and they're just rusted out. Somebody comes out and pulls parts off them because they still see some value in them, right? Mm-hmm. And so when Jim talked about putting a clear coat of lacquer, it was just like rust and lacquer. It like, boom, it was like, and then the rest of the tune just wrote itself at that point. Wow. And so, and that's really the whole theme of the record. We approached the record in that way. We did not rehearse anything. We went in, they knew the basic changes and themes of the, melodic themes. Mm-hmm. And we did not rehearse anything. We went in, we basically blew through every tune 3 times and took our best one.
And that was also a decision between you and Dominic to cut
as
little as possible and try to get the best take out of the feels, right?
Yep. He was like, no, he goes, I think, because I was telling him what kind of the premise behind it all, and he was like, well, then we're not going to rehearse it. Let's not rehearse it. He goes, I'm going to chart it out. So in doing that, we broke it down. I was thinking about doing almost like a string band, almost kind of like a bluegrass crossover kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But then as we talked more, and he made the connection to Mike Shimon, who plays percussion and drums on it, we just pared it down to a trio, which to me, I love trios. That's where I've always really felt most comfortable. Mm-hmm. That's what the Urban Farmers were. Farmers were the trio. We did that thing for 10 years or something like that. And so we went in, and I knew that it wasn't going to be perfect. And the whole idea of going in and doing this is that I was like, let's just set it. I don't want to do expectations. I don't want expectations about what it's going to be. I want it to be what it's going to be, and I just want it to be honest. Because one of my mantras is never perfect, but always honest. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's where the whole record. So I knew there's rough spots on it. I hear them. But the thing is for the first time ever, I listened to something that I did, and I can hear things that I would have done differently, and they don't drive me crazy.
That's beautiful.
And that's part of that whole improvisation thing, is like getting used to the flaws, and don't be worried about anything failure. Don't worry about what anybody else perceives as being great or perfect or anything like that. It just needs to be honest. And that's what I think the record is. It's just it's an honest representation of where I am at a certain point in time.
Now, who all is on the record with you?
Okay, so there's, of course, myself on all guitars. Mm-hmm. And then you have Dominic John Davis on bass. He does some electric and upright on that. And then on percussion is Mike Shimon. I don't know if you're familiar with Mike Shimon or not. Mm-hmm. So Mike Shimon is a long time. He's in a lot of Michigan circles, a lot of the southwest corner of the state, and up through Traverse City and whatnot, throughout a lot of Michigan groups, like May Irwine. Yeah. So he is primarily the drummer that plays with May Irwine most of the time.
Okay.
So that's where he's from. And when I was talking to Dominic about the kind of stuff that I really like to pull from, we said, he's like, let's approach this like how Leo Kottke does with his records with percussion. It's not really a drum set. He'll come in and he'll have a percussionist kind of set up like a prepared kit, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's a mixture of congas and stuff like that, and he makes a kit out of various things, and that's what Shimon did. He came in, and man, I had never played with Mike, and I just knew Mike just because of his association with May Irwine. Mm-hmm. And Dominic and his wife Rachel playing in a lot of stuff that are entwined with all of that circle of Nate Earlwine, Joshua Davis, and all those guys, right?
Right.
So, um, and the other thing that was great is that Mike brought a world percussion element to it. Mike was an understudy of Jamie Haddad. And if you're not familiar with Jamie Haddad, he look him up. He was like for 20 plus years, he was Paul Simon's percussionist.
Oh, wow.
And so Mike spent a lot of time learning from Jamie Haddad, and so he brings a really cool world music. He plays some of these progressive Greek bands in Detroit and stuff. So which just completely, the light went on. I was like, oh my God, that's perfect. That's exactly. So when you're listening to the record, there's not a whole lot that is like a traditional drum set, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of layers of really kind of cool, subtle stuff going on, and I hats off to Mike, because he came in and he just killed it. There was, I mean, it's like, hey, we were thinking about this, and he's like, okay, how about I do this, and it'd just be, yeah, that's better. That's even better than what I was expecting.
Oh,
You know,
right on.
so
Yeah.
so it's primarily the three of us. Now, the guy that recorded it, his name was Charlie Chamberlain, and we recorded at 4115 Studios in East Nashville. And Charlie is a fantastic guitar player. He comes from that roots music, kind of bluegrassy. He did actually add a couple of little bits of mandolin in there.
Okay.
So when you hear some mandolin, there's the mandolin kind of blends in with the quirky, weird way that I tune my guitar. So we get a lot of weird chorusing multi strings together. So he actually added a few things here and there, sprinkled some of his in there. So, but it's really just the four of us. That's what it comes down to. So I mean, primarily the trio, and then a couple spots where Charlie just added a little bit of something just to add a little different tonality in some areas.
Now, how long did it take to record this?
We recorded in 3 days.
And do you what time of year? When was this?
It was right at the end of July
of last year.
July of 21.
Yep. I've been sitting on this record for a year. You and I have talked since a year ago, in December here.
Mm-hmm.
I got to taste test it early. Actually, we've already done a little interview, but you delayed the release of the record, and
yep,
this is now out in the public, and this is part 2 for us here. So,
right.
I thought this was an amazing little jump ahead from the improvisations, but it's so and you were talking about Leo Kottke there too, which was funny because if I recall, you weren't familiar with him when I mentioned that. I caught a lot of that listening to the record.
Yeah. I'm certainly familiar with Leo Kottke, but I had never made the association, because really, when it comes down to guitar playing, it's really two different. We're two different animals, right?
Yeah.
There's no way I'll ever compare my playing to Leo Kottke. He's a unique, completely unique, all in of himself. But the approach of some of the music, so when Dominic was talking about what we wanted to do, even Shimon piped in. He's like, "Oh, so kind of like a Leo Kottke thing." And so I was like, "God damn, this Leo Kottke keeps coming up." And I was familiar with Leo, but I never really delved into him that much.
Okay, because you and I talked just by messenger or texting each other, and I was under the assumption that you were like, I don't really know much about him, and I know of him. Everybody kind of knows of him in the guitar world, but you, I know you've put it together now.
And I never really listened to him.
Right, that's what it was.
A little bits and pieces here and there, but at the time that I was checking him out, I was really heavy into Michael Hedges.
Oh yeah.
And so for me, I get into these weird patterns where I listen to certain things. It's like I get into I might get into Turkish oud music and go for like a year on that kind of stuff, and then I jump from that over to Mastodon for a year or so. I mean, I'm a little bit of ADD in that regard, right?
I remember Michael Hedges coming up when you and I gigged back in the day. That was something that you and Mark turned me on to. Jamming that a lot.
yeah, Hedges.
Hmm.
Man, what a
Oh,
and he's one of those kind of guys. I remember where I was when I found out that he passed away.
oh yeah.
So I was really big into Michael Hedges. Again, I would never say that my playing is like Michael
Right.
Hedges, but I just
It's
listened to what he
influenced.
did and mood. I guess it's mood and flavor. Some of that might come through.
Absolutely.
Um, you know, but yeah, and so yeah, it's like you said, like you say, yeah, I was not really adept with Leo Kottke, and then since then, I've spent much more time listening to him, especially after I did an experiment. And this is a really cool thing. If you ever do a record, put the record, and then it's on Spotify. This is where Spotify is an evil beast, right? But in everything there's some pluses that you can do here. So I just let the record play one day, and then I let see the algorithms would pull in,
Hmm.
and the third track that it pulled in. Well, the first one was a guy named Phil Cook that's from Minnesota. Really cool. I really dig his stuff quite a bit. And then there was somebody else. Joshua Hyslop was another one. And then the third one was Leo Kottke.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, this is interesting. This is really interesting. And it was a Vaseline Machine Gun. I don't know if you know that tune or not, but it's and again, it's not like I really hear it and go, whoa, I can hear Leo Kottke in my playing. That's not it at all.
Right.
But there's a general vibe and the way it's approached with
Yes.
the
Yes.
percussion and the accompaniment that goes with it. So
Yep, and it's just part of the feels. This is a really unique piece. You have 9 songs here that connect together, but also are so separate in the sound.
yeah,
It just makes it for a really unique thing. And I remember you were tossing around, why do I want to release this, but now I want to release it. But having the band stand behind you, and Dominic coming forward with it, you were kind of putting your foot down that you knew you had something. Uh,
yeah,
um.
yep.
So when did you release that this year?
October 14th is when it went live on all
Okay.
the streaming platforms.
Okay. And have you had any good positive vibes since October? It's only been 3 months.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I said, part of this is that I think it's really important if you're doing anything creative is that you really have to avoid expectations. I really think if you have too many expectations about things that you're setting yourself up for, the expectations are like poison.
Mm-hmm.
So, my expectations, really didn't have any, and I really worked hard to maintain that mindset. And then it's just over 800 total streams on the record on Spotify. I don't even know what iTunes and all of the other ones are because they don't really have a good data metric system for me to jump
Mm-hmm.
on. I just like the Spotify one because it's really easy and
Now,
I can
did you
jump
put it
on
on a
that.
label?
No,
How
it's
did you grab the 800 streams, or did you just find playlists to pop it into, or how did that work?
um so you upload it and I did the through DistroKid is
That's
who
what I
I
use.
did
Yeah.
that through. Yep.
Mm.
So DistroKid's got that thing where you can do the spin and get it on a playlist, and that may or may not really matter. I don't know, but the 800 streams I think are really primarily organic. Um, I haven't done a whole lot of promotion on it. It did help that Dominic was out on the road with Jack when that came out,
Mm-hmm.
when it was released, and there's been a couple different times where he's reposted stuff on it, and you can tell because it's like over the last couple months I've had plays in the Philippines and Costa Rica and South America and stuff, and those are all places where they were touring, right?
Oh yeah.
So people that that follow Dominic, they obviously saw that. So I think that helped perpetuate some of those streams as well.
Oh, wonderful.
So yeah, I guess primarily organic. I haven't really done anything to promote it per se.
That was a question I had coming up. Are you going to do any shows or promo coming into the new year here?
Oh man, I'm just trying to keep my head above water right now. Right now, I'm back doing one of those soul crushing day gigs, and it's got me out and working out in New Mexico right now.
Are you still working for Gibson at all?
No, that was about a year and a half, and then I had an opportunity to take this job that took me out to New Mexico, and unfortunately, I gave into the evil of high pay, high paying type of gig,
Hmm.
and I had to take it. Um, and so I stepped away from Gibson, which was really which was puzzling to me, right? I mean, because
Yeah.
as a guitar player, you're thinking, man, I'm working at Gibson. This is like, and I saw some cool things. I saw some really cool things. The first Mustang, Dave Mustaine signature V that came down my line. I was a QC. I was a final QC inspector for Gibson,
Oh wow.
and the first one that came off the line came down my line, and I took pictures, kept
Yeah.
a picture of it and made documentation of the serial numbers because you never know when you might come across that thing again, right?
Yeah.
And so I saw a lot of really cool things, met a lot of really cool people, and that was a really hard decision. But when it came right down to it, it's just economically, I had to take this other thing. It was a game changer for me,
You could.
economically, but it's really difficult because my family's back here in Tennessee, and I'm out there flying solo, and I come back, maybe once a month for a long weekend with the family.
Oh wow. Once a
So
month.
all of that stuff going on makes it really hard to grasp the idea of trying to promote
Yep.
the thing. Not to say that it can't be done. It's really exhaustive.
Where are
Um,
you at in Nashville? Or near Nashville?
yeah, just outside of Nashville. That's where I'm at right now. I live just about 35 minutes from downtown Nashville, on the southwest edge of Clarksville,
Clarksville?
Tennessee. Clarksville, Tennessee. Yep,
Okay.
which is the home of Fort Campbell
Okay.
Army Base, and the famed picture of Jimi Hendrix when he was in the Screaming Eagle Paratroopers and
Oh yeah, yeah.
playing the guitar outside of the mess hall. That's just right across town from here.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's where I'm at. But doing a work assignment out in New Mexico, which has been interesting. It's really interesting. I really like the desert rock type stuff. So
Oh,
there's a lot of that stuff out there. The high desert sound or low desert sound, whichever line you want to take, I guess.
wow.
A
Okay.
lot of cool stuff out there, and so yeah, it's
Fantastic. So you may or may not do a show here or there depending on when you can pin it down, but you're
yeah.
not seeing it happen right now.
I really I'm not going to say that it won't happen. I just don't see it really happening
Hmm.
right away. I would say that probably, I mean, I have been eyeing doing another record,
Oh,
and it would verge a little bit differently than this one. Um, Still coming from the same, a lot of acoustic type stuff, but it would probably mean I might venture more into bringing some more of the electric stuff into it.
wow.
Um, but and I think if I was to do shows, I think I want to put it around that another record if I can get my
Yeah,
crap together on that.
yeah.
So
How often do you come back to Michigan by chance?
boy, I tell you what, the last time I was in Michigan was in July, um, and that was for a memorial for my mother who
Oh,
had passed
okay.
away
Right,
back in January.
right.
Um, and so that's the last time I had been to Michigan. Prior to that, it was January, mid-January, almost a year ago that I was up there.
And you really don't have
Um,
a reason to come back at this point, or do
not
you?
not not really. Um, it's just there's so many other things going on. I mean, if I were to do another record and I thought that I was going to go out and do some shows, I would certainly go back or come back up to Michigan and do some of those. I think there might be some connections through Dominic and some of those folks that maybe I might be able to do something there. I don't know that for sure, but
That's what I was going to ask you. Is it
yeah,
land a couple promo shows here and there throughout the state?
yeah, and coming back and doing stuff in Mount Pleasant, right? That's, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that was the center of where the urban farmers and whatnot, and it might even, this next record might even venture a little bit more off center, more maybe even touch more on like an avant-garde kind of side of things.
Wonderful.
But where it but then again, it's one of those things, I don't want to put that expectation on it, right?
No, it'll happen. Try to let it happen
Yeah,
naturally.
yeah,
That's I
yeah,
see your
yeah.
full.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. So so I could see where there'd be a chance where I'd come up and do 2 or 3 spot shows up there. Probably hit the Mount Pleasant area. I've got still enough people that remember me from
Yeah.
way back in the urban farmers and the herd days that I think I could do some stuff in a small venue kind of thing. But
Yeah. Now, have you talked with Dominic about this new record, that possible second record?
no, the only time I mentioned anything to him, because I hadn't seen him since we recorded the record, we'd exchanged text messages on and off, and then when out on the road with Jack, they did a leg of their tour where they played Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is just like 50 minutes from where I'm living out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was one of the few acoustic shows that Jack did. So my wife was actually out with me during that time. And so we went up and saw him, and that was back in October. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mid October.
Okay.
And I mentioned to him, I said, he was talking about his schedule, and it's kind of crazy, then looking out, maybe he probably wouldn't free up until sometime in the fall of 2023.
Right.
And I said, well, just let me know what's going on, because maybe we need to do another one. And he kind of lit up and kind of cracks again. He goes, yeah, hey, just let me know, man. The dude is just so cool.
That's
right?
awesome.
I don't know if you've ever met Dominic, but
I have not actually. You'd think I would have met him by now, but I'm sure we've crossed paths enough. But I had that opportunity.
Yeah, Dominic is just such an unassuming type of dude, and I really credit him for. There's no way this record would have happened if it wasn't for Dominic reaching out to me and telling me to. And so I mean that I'm forever grateful in that, and it turned out the way it did. And I kind of was able to stay on my course of staying away from ridiculous expectations and not getting bogged down in details. He did a really good job at just saying, no, let's keep going. Let's just knock out 3 of them. 3 takes on them, and then we ended up with some improvisation. There's almost a whole hour's worth of improvisational stuff we did.
Really?
That has got a lot of cool stuff in it.
So you got some outtakes.
Lot. Oh yeah, there's and even if you edit it down, there's still probably 35-40 minutes of some really cool stuff. I mean, you're gonna, because it's improv, you got some, we're little warts here and there, but there's some really cool stuff. And in fact, one of the improvs made it on the record.
Oh, that's fantastic. I remember you telling me this, yeah.
Yeah. Equity of Joy. That didn't even exist until the day that we turned on the tape. And I just did basically.
You were trying to have me guess it, and I could not guess it.
Yeah. And it's that track. It's so cool. When I was listening to the rough mixes and stuff, my son and daughter, and we were all sitting listening to it, and when that one ended, because it epitomizes the moment that I was feeling in the studio. I felt there was, I don't know if I felt that much joy in music in a very, very long time, and that's where the Equity of Joy comes from. And when that track got done, I looked up and my son just started bawling. It just just hit him, and that was a wonderful feeling.
That
You
is,
know, you always like to make your kids cry, right?
well, it's amazing when they feel what your connection is, you know. And
Yeah, yeah,
to me,
yeah.
that when I see that happen with my kids when I'm playing music, is it's like I'm on another planet or something. Like, oh my
Ye-
gosh, they've connected with what I'm doing.
Yep, yep.
Uh-huh.
You know, and it's something that just it didn't exist before we played it. And
Right.
that's what I think is so great about it. You know, it's I basically just kind of showed I just threw out 3 chord voicings and we just turned it on and went. And it was just like it was like when it was done, it was just like even Shimon looked at me. He goes, "Okay, so that wasn't a song." I'm like, "No, dude, that just happened, man." And he
Oh,
was like, "Wow, wow,
oh, amazing.
that's pretty cool, man."
Well,
And
oh, I want you to do me a favor here. I'm going to walk through all 9 tracks by the name.
okay,
Give me a brief feel on each one. Like track 1, all good things.
yeah, all good things. Basically, kind of coming from the idea that you know you're gonna run through life. And when it comes down to it, like even the song at the end, there's kind of this part where it shifts moodily, like mood wise, right? And it goes almost kind of into a requiem. And it's like at that point in your life where you stop and you can reflect on all the things when you reach a point of inner peace and you're at peace with where life has you, and you can look back and see all the good things that
Mm,
have happened, that you've been a part of, that have happened to you, and it's all good things. And even in the moments of sorrow, like when my mother passed away.
mm-hmm.
Um, Another example is but my old friend Kevin McCreary. Did you know Kevin?
Oh
He
yeah,
was
yeah,
in my,
yep.
um, he's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. When you know he got diagnosed that he was basically just had weeks to live, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I watched him on social media, and this is where I do like the social media. I had the opportunity to watch him go around and go visit the people that meant a lot to him. And every day he would post the 4 records that he listened to that morning. And it's like in the face of knowing what his end game was going to be, he still found all the good things,
Yep,
right?
yep.
So that's what it comes down to, is when you reach a point in life where you can reflect and you can really appreciate all the good things that have happened to you.
Beautiful. Number 2, Bozeman.
Bozeman. So Bozeman, before I worked for Gibson, I won a sweepstakes on social media from the Gibson Guitar Company that sent me and my wife for 4 days, 3 nights to Bozeman, Montana. And we got to tour the facility and got to meet all these Gibson people and all this stuff. Well, while I was there, they had a guitar in the hotel room that they put us up in.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was sitting there looking out the window, I don't know if you've ever been to Bozeman, Montana,
No.
but you look around and you got mountains, you know, not big mountains, but you get part of the Rockies and stuff that are kind of wrap around 2/3 of the town. And as I was just kind of sitting there, there was a picture on the wall in the room. It was like a painting of a guy doing fly fishing. And then on the other wall, there was like a cowboy, right? This painting of this guy walking off into the sun, or on a horseback going off in the distance. And then I looked at the mountains, and I just kind of, as I was looking at the peaks of the mountains, I kind of envisioned if it were like a music box, you know, with the little tines they just played. So it just, that was just the flow of what I felt, the contours of the mountains. And that's the melodic bottoms.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
and then Mike came in with that very almost like horse clopping, like you know, uh, like the gait of a horse, right?
Right,
And
right.
so that's what Bozeman is. It's
Wow.
just it's about the terrain and
Place and time.
the atmosphere. Yeah, place and time in Bozeman, Montana.
Chasing Snakes, number 3.
Chasing snakes, we all do it. That's a term I use for when we gotta fight through the things, the challenges that we have inside, whether it be depression, anxiety, fear, all the things. And when those things come in and they're overwhelming you, and it's kind of taken from the idea of Saint Patrick, um, hence my name, right?
Yeah.
And he chased the snakes out of Ireland, and that's so and the fact that there was never snakes in Ireland, that was used as a term, right, for the bad evildoers and whatnot, and the things that reside in your head, and shedding the things that might knock you down and try to beat
Got
you
ya.
down and keep you from moving forward.
Got ya. Number 4, Rust.
Rust. Rust, written from the viewpoint of a car
Hmm.
found in a field.
That's the
And
one you discussed earlier.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it's the whole idea of someone coming along and reaching out and seeing something in you, and they pull you out of the weeds, and they bring you back from the dead, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like how Dominic reached out to me about doing a record, right?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Thing is the song was written long before that, but it's the metaphor is there. So
Yeah, man. Or an old guitar, even. I get that whole
yeah,
thing.
yep. Because I've got another tune that I've written that's based on a guitar.
I was waiting for it.
Yep.
Right on. Well, you just did number 5, Equity of Joy. So let's slip over to 6, Silk.
Silk. So that kind of that now with that one, I venture into the Middle Eastern. The
Mm.
melodically, it's very Middle Eastern kind of phrasing, and that came out of I was flipping through my Instagram, and for the longest time on my, it gives you suggestions, right?
Hmm.
So mine were all like old cars, guitars, and then there would be people that do yoga. And I don't, I was like, okay, I don't know how that comes into play, but as I'm rolling through, there was this one lady that did the yoga, and I didn't even realize that yoga. She was actually more of a kind of yoga and dance kind of thing, and it's just her movement was mesmerizing. The way that they do, I mean, they do all this stuff, the handstands and the muscle control and all that kind of stuff is just absolutely amazing. And it was just the flow of silk. That's where the term comes from. Is I imagine just the trailing silk behind someone, a dancer, you know, or
Ah,
so- or movement.
gotcha. And number 7, Finding Fergus.
Finding Fergus, kind of went almost kind of like Americana kind of thing. My wife and I one day we went on a drive here in Tennessee, and we were driving along, and we found this little beagle dog out in the middle of nowhere, and the poor dog was skin and bones.
Oh,
It was eating sticks,
oh.
and my wife she's a sucker for an animal in need, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't even have to be in need; it's just an animal in general. And so we picked him up out of this ditch, and there wasn't a house for miles either way. And so she's like, "Well, we got to help him." And we got like 3 miles down the road, and she's petting him. She goes, "It's all right, Fergus." And I'm like, "Oh God,
Oh,
you named him."
oh,
And now we got him. So that was just the day we found Fergus, and that's what I think about when I play that tune.
beautiful. Beautiful. What a great story. And number 8, On Lake Chelan. Chelan?
Yeah, Chelan. Yeah,
Chelan.
up in the state of New York. There's a really long lake, and that was written. That was one of the first things I wrote when I came back to playing guitar back in 2012, 2011 timeframe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a guy that I was working with at the time. He had taken a 2-week vacation to go back to where he grew up, was in Lake Chelan, Chelan, up in Washington. And as he was just talking about just the simplicity of going on a boat ride, the length of the lake, and it's a really long lake. I did some like I'd really like to go there sometime, and just the sparkle and the sheer joy that he had when he was talking about that, and that's what I just tried to capture, and I feel like it's probably the most joyous of all the tunes on the record.
Oh, it's
It just
beautiful.
it's kind of uplifting, and
It's
and
got its
that's
own feel. I remember that.
yeah, yep.
Number 9, Circle Burner. Number 8.
So this one seems like it's way out in left field to everything else on the record, I think. But it's like everything else on the record, there's a story behind it, and it really does tie into it. And it's like realizing that there's parts of your life that are just what they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you really listen to the lyrics, it's about race car drivers. My dad used to build race cars for people, and race over at Crystal Raceway there in Michigan.
Yeah.
Um, and so it it's really just purely a story about finding out that you may not be the only the siblings that may not be the only ones that you have, right?
Right.
And there's it's slightly fictional, but it's mostly nonfiction. And it's just told from the kind of metaphorical. It's like trading paint with circle burner number 8. There was people that want to race you and they want to push you around the track, and then there are the ladies that want to push you around the track. you know,
Yeah, right.
and so that's where that comes from. And I kind of went back and forth whether or not I was going to put that on there, and then I was like, yeah, I want to. I want to, just because it's probably kind of a prelude to where I might kind of go with the
Mm-hmm.
next record, maybe.
Good, good.
Yeah. So that's it.
Oh man. Well, Patrick Blair, thank you so much for spending the time hanging out and talking. This took a good year for us to get put
Yeah.
together, and it's recapped a kick-ass friendship that we've had going back
Yep.
20 some odd years, or even more.
Yeah.
And just to hear that you're putting out incredible music like this nowadays,
Appreciate
I'm going to suggest to anybody that listens to this, whether it be through Patrick's channels or any of mine, please put on this record. You can find it anywhere. You can listen along with the talking. You can go right to the tracks and hear what he's talking about. You can use this as a guide. This might be a good show to give people the ability to say, here's A and B. Now, do the homework and sit back and enjoy what this artist has to offer. And Patrick has been doing this on Instagram and elsewhere. I mean, obviously you're a very busy person, but the music's been a long time part of your life, and now it's pouring out of your pores. So I just think it's good for people to get this opportunity to put A and B together and to listen to a wonderful record and hear the story behind it.
Man, I appreciate that, Scott. And I can't say, man, when you reached out to me a few days ago, say, hey, let's get this phone call taken care of. It was a very welcome message, and I was looking forward to it. And I sincerely appreciate you.
Well, I
taking
know
the time,
we did a little question and answer thing, and then the album got put on delay, and I didn't know what you really wanted me to do. I know you wanted a story, but at the same time, I've been doing this podcast here, the Mid Michigan Music History Podcast, and we've or Michigan Music History Podcast, MMHP in the 989, and we're doing really good with it. And I got to thinking, you know what? Let's do a little interview where you can use this on your sites. You can pop it up in you can email it to your fans. You can do whatever you want, and I can use it on my platform, and we can promote each other's stuff and get the word out about the records or the tours or whatever, whoever I may interview, and about whatever the purpose may be. But and another Michigan tie. I mean, it fits with what I'm doing. So anyway, Patrick, I'm looking forward to seeing you back home at some point, or maybe hearing that next record too. And this is a fine piece of work. Keep doing what you're doing, man.
I appreciate it, Scott. Thank you so much. And hey, we just do what we do, right? We keep expectations in check, and we just take our time, and we finally get to this point. So I really appreciate
that expectations part. It's for myself, even with my 6th record here coming out. It's like after a while, you just do what you do. You don't really think about where it's heading. You gotta give the best of what you got, and if you feel it's something to offer, then hopefully the people with the ears that are intrigued will grab a hold of it.
Right on, man.
Thank you, brother.
Okay, cool, man. It's great talking to you, Scott.
You too, man.
Okay, take it easy. Bye.